"I need shelter," said the Apache woman as she knocked on the door of a widowed rancher on Christ. Christmas was coming, but John did not feel like celebrating. After losing his wife 2 years ago, the ranch had felt emptier than ever. The house, though sturdy and warm, seemed to echo with silence. Every corner reminded him of her: the small chair by the fireplace where she liked to sit, the cupboard where she kept her favorite plates, and the garden she had tended so carefully in the spring. John walked through the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew that had been simmering all afternoon. The smell of onions, carrots, and tender beef filled the room, giving him a small comfort. He hummed softly, a tune his wife used to sing, though his voice was rough and quiet. He was used to being alone, used to the routine of feeding the animals, fixing the fences, and keeping the small ranch running. Still, the silence was heavy today. There was a chill in the air that the fire alone could not chase away. A sudden, soft knock on the door startled him. He froze, spoon in hand, listening. It was late afternoon and there were few travelers in this remote area, especially at this time of year. His first thought was caution. Who could it be? A neighbor, a lost traveler, or someone more dangerous? He set down the spoon, wiped his hands on his apron, and walked slowly toward the door. When he opened it, he saw her. A woman standing in the snow, shivering slightly. Her clothing was simple, worn from travel, and a thin blanket hung over her shoulders. Her dark hair fell loosely around her face, and her eyes, deep and wary, looked directly at him. She was Apache, he could tell from her features and the way she carried herself, though she seemed young, perhaps no more than 25. She held a small bundle close to her chest, as if protecting something precious. I need shelter," she said softly, her voice trembling not only from the cold but also from fear. "Please, just for the night." His instincts told him to be careful. The world could be harsh, and travelers were not always trustworthy, but something in her eyes told him she was honest. She looked tired, scared, and in need. He could see the snow on her shoulders and the frost on her hair. He thought of his own loneliness, of the empty house, and of the small kindness he could offer. "Come in," he said finally, stepping aside. "You can warm yourself by the fire. I'll get you something warm to drink." As she sipped the tea, John watched quietly. He did not want to ask too many questions too quickly. She seemed tired, but there was a quiet strength about her. The way she held herself, even in fear, suggested someone who had survived hardships before. She looked around the cabin with a cautious curiosity, noticing the simple furnishings, the fire crackling in the hearth, and the small decorations he had made for the upcoming Christmas. "I thank you," she said quietly, looking at him. "I did not know where else to go. It is cold and dangerous out there. You can stay as long as you need. I was traveling to find them, but I became lost. I did not know where to go." Her voice was soft, and there was a sadness in it that made John feel a pang of empathy. He knew what it was to lose someone important. He had lost his wife, and the emptiness of the house was a constant reminder of her absence. "I understand," he said simply. "I live alone too. But tonight, you don't have to be alone." After a while, she spoke again, her voice quieter, almost to herself. "It is strange to be welcomed by someone I do not know. I feared the worst." The first sign of trust. John returned the smile, a small one because he felt it too. He felt the first stirrings of connection in months. As the evening went on, John prepared a simple meal of stew and bread. The woman helped quietly, passing him vegetables and stirring the pot. Her movements were careful and practiced. She had clearly traveled far, learned to manage hardships, and could adapt to whatever was necessary to survive. The two of them worked together, sharing the small tasks of cooking and cleaning, forming a rhythm without needing to speak much. When the meal was ready, they sat together at the table. The fire warmed their faces, and the smell of food filled the cabin. She ate quietly, savoring the warmth and the sustenance. John watched her, noticing how careful she was, how polite and how respectful. He felt a growing sense of admiration and protectiveness. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Outside, the snow fell steadily, blanketing the ranch in quiet white. The wind howled, but inside it was warm and safe. They talked quietly, sharing stories in small fragments. She told him about her journey, about her family, and about the life she had before the separation. He listened, offering small bits of his own story, though carefully. He did not speak much about his wife, but he shared stories of life on the ranch, of the animals he tended, and of the work that kept him busy each day. Time passed slowly. The fire burned low, casting shadows across the cabin walls. The woman yawned, and John noticed her fatigue. He offered her a place to sleep, a simple bed in the corner of the cabin. She accepted gratefully, arranging her blanket carefully before lying down. John made sure the fire was safe and then sat back in his chair, watching her for a moment before closing his eyes. Outside, the storm continued, but inside there was warmth, safety, and a fragile sense of trust. Two strangers from different worlds had found a moment of peace together. John realized that even in his loneliness, he could offer kindness. And the woman realized that even in a place unknown to her, she could find shelter. That night the cabin was quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire and the occasional gust of wind. John thought about the woman, about the journey that had brought her here, and about the simple act of opening a door. It seemed small, but it had changed the course of both their nights. And so in the quiet, snowy ranch, two lives briefly crossed, forming the first threads of trust, understanding, and perhaps something more. The storm outside would pass, but the warmth inside the cabin would remain, in memory and in the small, shared moments that had already begun to connect them. The morning sun peeked through the small windows of the cabin, sending soft golden light across the room. The snow outside sparkled under its warmth, though the air was still crisp and cold. John had already risen, tending to the animals in the barn before breakfast. He moved carefully, trying not to disturb the woman who was still sleeping in the corner of the cabin. The previous night had been quiet and peaceful, and he felt a strange sense of satisfaction knowing that she had a safe place to rest. When he returned inside, he found her awake, quietly sitting by the fire, warming her hands. She had changed out of the damp clothes from the journey, and her hair had dried into soft waves around her face. She looked at John with a small, shy smile, and he returned it with the same gentle warmth. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep his voice light. "Did you sleep well? The storm has passed now, at least for today. It will be easier to travel if you need to continue your journey, but you are welcome to stay here as long as you need." "You are not imposing," John said firmly. "It is not often I have company, and it is Christmas soon. Perhaps it is time to have someone to share it with." John cooked eggs and bread over the stove, and she helped by setting the table and pouring coffee. They ate quietly at first, the sounds of the cabin, the fire crackling, the faint wind outside, the soft clink of dishes, filling the space between them. After a while, their conversation began to flow more naturally. She told him about her family and the journey that had brought her here. She spoke cautiously at first, but as the morning progressed, she began to relax and share more. "We were traveling to visit relatives," she explained. "But our path was blocked by raiders. I was separated from them while hiding in the forest. I walked for days, not knowing which way to go. Then I saw smoke from your chimney and I hoped, just hoped, that someone would be there to help. My family, they need me. I could not give up." After breakfast, they decided to clear some of the snow from the barn and repair a broken fence that had been damaged during the storm. As they worked together, they fell into an easy rhythm. John handed her tools, and she worked alongside him without complaint. The snow was deep in places, but they moved steadily, helping each other where needed. "You work well with your hands," John said as he lifted a wooden plank into place. "I can see you know how to take care of things." He realized that she had lived a life far different from his own, one filled with constant challenges and danger. Yet she faced it with quiet courage, not bitterness or fear. He felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity about the woman in front of him. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, they finished their work. The barn was cleared, the animals safe, and the fence repaired. They stood for a moment, looking at their work, breathing heavily from the effort but smiling with satisfaction. "You did well today," John said finally. "I am glad you are here to help." He too had felt the emptiness of isolation for many years, though his life had been quieter, less dangerous. There was a strange comfort in their shared experience, the feeling that someone else understood the struggle and the relief of a hard day's work. That evening, they returned to the cabin, tired but content. John lit the fire again and the woman sat close, warming her hands. They prepared a simple dinner, talking quietly about small things, plans for the next day, the animals on the ranch, and the coming Christmas. There was a growing sense of trust between them, a gentle bond formed not through words alone but through shared effort, understanding, and respect. As the night deepened, John noticed the woman seemed restless. She looked out the window at the snow falling softly, her eyes distant. He hesitated for a moment, then asked gently, "Are you thinking of your family?" "You do not have to face it alone. You are not alone here." The woman slept more soundly this time, and John felt a rare sense of contentment. He realized that having someone else in the house, someone with courage, intelligence, and kindness, made the silence of the ranch more bearable. They had begun to understand each other, not as strangers, but as two people who had both known loss and who could offer comfort and support. Over the next few days, they continued to work together around the ranch. John showed her how to care for the animals, how to mend fences, and how to prepare food for the winter. She learned quickly, surprising him with her intelligence and adaptability. In turn, she shared knowledge from her own life, how to track the paths of animals in the snow, how to gather herbs and roots for medicine, and how to recognize the signs of approaching weather. They exchanged skills and knowledge, creating a quiet partnership that grew stronger each day. One afternoon, while mending the roof of the barn, a sudden wind blew, scattering some tools and snow in their faces. They laughed together as they chased the runaway pieces, their laughter echoing through the crisp air. It was a small, joyful moment, but it marked the shift in their relationship, from cautious strangers to companions who could rely on each other, even in the smallest tasks. As Christmas approached, the woman helped John decorate the cabin in simple ways. They hung a few sprigs of pine, lit candles in the windows, and even fashioned a small wreath for the door. It was not a grand celebration, but it was warm, personal, and filled with care. For John, it was a reminder that life could still hold beauty and companionship. For the woman, it was a chance to feel at home in a place far from her own family, yet welcoming and safe. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, John looked at her and said, "I did not expect to have anyone here this Christmas, but I am glad you are here. It feels better than I imagined. But here I feel safe, and I am grateful." That night, as the snow fell outside and the fire burned low, both of them felt a sense of peace. The world beyond the cabin was uncertain and sometimes dangerous, but within these walls there was warmth, safety, and the beginnings of a bond that neither of them had anticipated. The woman, once weary and fearful, now felt a glimmer of hope. And John, once lonely and resigned to solitude, discovered that opening his door to someone in need could change everything. In those quiet moments, as the wind howled softly outside, they both knew that life on the ranch would never be the same. They had found trust, companionship, and the first hints of something deeper, something that could grow with time, care, and understanding. And so the days passed, each one weaving them closer together. Through work, conversation, and shared meals, they began to understand each other's worlds. The woman's fear slowly gave way to confidence, and John's loneliness began to soften into warmth. It was a new beginning for both of them, one built on trust, kindness, and the simple, powerful human need for connection. The days after Christmas passed quietly, but the peacefulness was fragile. The snow outside began to melt slightly, revealing patches of brown earth beneath. Inside the cabin, John and the woman had grown accustomed to each other's presence. Their daily routines continued, feeding the animals, repairing fences, and preparing meals, but a subtle tension began to linger. One afternoon, John noticed her pausing at the window, her expression wary. "What is it?" he asked gently, joining her. She glanced toward the distant hills. "I think someone is coming this way," she said quietly. "I do not know who, but they are near, perhaps raiders or others who mean harm." He had heard rumors of bounty hunters and hostile parties traveling through the region, but he had never expected them to reach his quiet ranch. "We must be careful," he said. "We cannot let them know you are here. If they are looking for you, we must protect ourselves." "I am not afraid to defend myself." It was no longer just about shelter or companionship. It was about survival. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, they heard the first distant sounds of horses. Their hooves were muffled by the melting snow, but John and the woman could hear the rhythm, steady and deliberate. The two exchanged a brief glance. They knew they had little time to prepare. John guided the woman to a hidden spot behind a stack of firewood in the corner of the barn. "Stay here," he whispered. "Do not come out unless I call you." John stepped outside, his heart pounding but his mind sharp. The approaching riders were now visible, a small group, perhaps 4 or 5 men. Their faces were stern, their movements deliberate. They did not seem to be carrying friendly intentions. John knew he had to act carefully. He could not risk a confrontation that might put both of them in danger. He called out in a loud, steady voice, feigning surprise. "Hello there. What brings you to this part of the ranch?" "We heard a woman was traveling through here, alone." He thought quickly and gestured toward a path leading into the forest. "I saw a traveler this morning," he said. "They went that way toward the trees. You might catch up if you hurry." He waited until they were out of sight before exhaling, his relief almost overwhelming. Inside the barn, he found the woman watching him, her eyes filled with curiosity and admiration. "Did it work?" she asked quietly. John nodded, giving a small smile. "For now. They believe you went into the forest. They will not be back soon." "Thank you. I do not know what I would have done without you." The woman shared her knowledge of tracking and hiding, teaching John how to notice signs of approaching people or animals in the snow. In turn, he showed her ways to secure the cabin and keep supplies hidden. Their cooperation deepened their trust, and a subtle bond of reliance and friendship grew stronger. One morning, while checking the fences, the woman paused suddenly, her hand pointing to a set of faint tracks in the mud. "They were here last night," she whispered. "Someone moved through while we slept." They would take turns watching for travelers, they would keep hidden supplies ready, and they would make sure the woman had an escape route through the forest if needed. Though the situation was frightening, the planning brought them closer. They worked side by side, not only as protector and protected but as partners, relying on each other's instincts and experience. The tension also brought moments of quiet reflection. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the woman spoke softly. "I did not think I would find safety again," she said. "I have traveled through forests, rivers, and mountains and always feared danger, but here, I feel something I have not felt in a long time: peace. We will do everything to keep it that way." The days passed with small tasks and quiet preparation. John repaired the barn roof, patched broken fences, and ensured the animals were safe. The woman helped him tirelessly, her presence steady and reassuring. They shared meals, exchanged stories, and found small joys in the simple rhythm of life on the ranch. Yet, the shadow of potential danger never fully lifted. One afternoon, as the snow melted into slush, the woman noticed another set of tracks approaching the cabin from a different direction. She alerted John immediately, and they took precautions, moving quickly to hide supplies and ensure their escape route was clear. The riders arrived at dusk, riding slowly, scanning the area. But once again, John's quick thinking diverted them, and the strangers moved on without discovering the woman. After the threat had passed, they both exhaled, the tension easing slightly. "Every day feels like a test," she said, her voice calm but tired. John nodded, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It is, but we are learning. Together, we can handle it." The woman shared stories of her childhood, her family, and the life she had known before tragedy struck. John shared memories of his wife, the work he loved, and the loneliness he had endured. Through these stories, they began to understand not only each other's experiences but also their hearts. By the time the snow had melted and the days grew longer, the cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a home. The woman had become part of the rhythm of life on the ranch, her presence a comfort and her skills invaluable. And for John, the loneliness that had defined his life for so long began to fade, replaced by a quiet happiness that came from shared work, shared danger, and shared trust. Though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. They had found each other, and in that finding, they had discovered courage, hope, and the beginnings of something that neither had expected but both had come to need. The days had grown warmer, and the snow was melting faster with each passing morning. The ranch looked different now. Muddy paths replaced the white blanket of winter, and the animals were restless, sensing the change of season. Life seemed to be returning to normal, but the quiet moments of peace were deceptive. Danger had not vanished. It had only been delayed. John and the woman both knew it, though neither spoke of it too often. One late afternoon, the woman was tending to the chickens while John repaired a fence near the barn. Suddenly, she froze, her hand stopping mid-motion. Her eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and alert. "John," she called softly. He looked up immediately. Her expression was tense, her posture rigid. "What is it?" he asked. "They are coming," she said quietly but firmly. "Not just passing through this time. They know where we are. They are organized." "Quickly," he said, his voice low but urgent. "We need to prepare. We cannot let them find you or the cabin." The cabin had become a stronghold of sorts, fortified not just with wood and nails but with strategy, care, and the combined strength of the two people inside. When the riders arrived, they did not announce themselves. Their horses' hooves sounded softly in the mud, and their presence was felt more than seen. John and the woman remained hidden, watching from the shadows of the barn. They knew that any wrong move could spell disaster. One of the men dismounted and approached the cabin cautiously. John's mind raced, thinking of ways to distract them, to lead them away without drawing attention to the woman. He noticed a small stack of firewood near the edge of the clearing and whispered an idea to her. "Wait for my signal," he said. "When I make a noise over there, throw this lantern to the other side. It will startle them, and we can slip inside unnoticed." At the same moment, the woman threw the lantern to the opposite side, the light and sound drawing the riders' attention. Horses whinnied and men shouted, but it worked. The group split briefly, allowing John and the woman to slip back into the cabin unnoticed. Once inside, they held their breath, listening as the men moved around outside, frustrated but unable to locate the cabin. The woman gripped her small knife tightly, ready to act if necessary. John whispered reassurances, though his own hands trembled slightly from adrenaline. After what felt like hours, the riders finally gave up and left, their horses kicking up mud as they rode away. Both John and the woman exhaled deeply, relief washing over them. They had survived, but the danger had reminded them of their vulnerability. Sitting by the fire later that night, the woman spoke softly. "We were lucky," she said, "too lucky. They may come again. Next time, we might not be able to trick them. We have survived before. We can survive again." They reinforced the doors, created hidden exits, and secured food supplies in case they needed to remain hidden for several days. They moved quickly, efficiently, and in perfect coordination. Each knew what the other would do, each anticipating the other's needs. The danger had sharpened their awareness and strengthened their partnership. As they worked, the woman spoke of her family again, her voice filled with longing and worry. "I do not know where they are," she said. "I hope they are safe, but I will not stop searching. I cannot. I must find them." You have me, and together, we will face whatever comes." John realized that he had grown attached to her, not just as a companion in danger, but as someone whose courage and resilience he deeply admired. The loneliness that had defined his life for so long seemed to fade in her presence. The afternoon brought a tense moment. From the top of a small hill near the ranch, John spotted movement, riders returning, more determined than before. He quickly alerted the woman and they prepared again, this time with a sense of urgency. They decided to hide in the forest behind the cabin, using the trees as cover while remaining close enough to defend the ranch if needed. The riders approached, their horses kicking up dirt and mud. John and the woman moved quietly through the forest, their bodies low and silent. They could hear the men shouting, searching for signs of life. The woman's heart raced, but she remained composed, guided by instinct and the trust she had developed in John. Suddenly, one of the men broke from the group, heading toward a side path. John whispered quickly, "Stay here. Do not move. I will handle this." "Stop right there," he called, trying to sound firm and unafraid. The man hesitated, surprised to see John alone. "Where is she?" he demanded. John shook his head slowly. "I do not know what you are talking about. Leave this place now or face the consequences. Leave or you will regret it." They had survived again, but they knew the danger was not over. The experience had tested their courage, their trust, and their ability to work together under pressure. That night they sat by the fire, exhausted but safe for now. The woman looked at John, her eyes reflecting both fear and admiration. "I cannot thank you enough," she said. "You saved my life today, and many times before." They were no longer merely companions. They were partners, united by danger, shared effort, and the understanding that each could rely on the other. As the fire burned low, the woman spoke softly of her hopes for the future. "I want to find my family. I want to rebuild what was lost. And I want to find peace somewhere safe, somewhere I can call home." "You have that now," he said. "Even if the world outside is uncertain, here you have safety, trust, and friendship. We will face whatever comes together." The challenges they had faced had not only tested them, but had also revealed the depth of their resilience and the strength of their bond. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and had come through it together, stronger and more connected than before. The cabin, once a simple shelter, had become a place of refuge, a symbol of trust and courage, and a home where two lives intersected in ways neither had expected. The woman, once alone and fearful, now felt a sense of belonging and hope. John, once lonely and resigned to solitude, discovered that compassion, courage, and trust could bring unexpected joy. And so, as the night deepened and the fire burned low, they sat together, knowing that life would continue to challenge them, but also knowing that they would face it side by side. The future was uncertain, but the bond they had forged through shared trials would carry them through whatever came next. The days following the last encounter with the riders were calmer, though John and the woman remained alert. The tension of recent weeks had given way to a careful peace. Spring was approaching, and the snow was melting fast, revealing patches of green beneath. The ranch felt alive again. The animals moved with renewed energy, the earth smelled fresh, and the sun shone warmly through the windows of the cabin. Inside the cabin, life had settled into a comforting rhythm. The woman moved freely now, carrying out daily chores with confidence, her presence a natural part of the household. She tended to the chickens, helped John with repairs, and prepared meals with quiet efficiency. In turn, John taught her more about the ranch, showing her how to care for the animals, mend fences properly, and plan for the days ahead. Their teamwork was seamless, built on trust and shared experience. One morning, as they worked in the barn, the woman paused and looked toward the distant hills. "John," she said softly, "I have been thinking about my family. I want to try to find them again. Perhaps it is time to search more actively." John gathered supplies, dried food, blankets, and tools, while the woman studied the maps and recalled the paths she had traveled before. They worked quietly but with purpose, communicating without unnecessary words. The bond they had formed over weeks of danger and shared work gave them a sense of confidence. That evening, they sat by the fire, planning the route. The woman spoke of the places she remembered, the rivers, forests, and hills that could guide her to her family. John listened carefully, offering suggestions and advice based on his knowledge of the land. They discussed contingencies, safe spots to rest, and ways to avoid potential danger. The planning was meticulous, but the atmosphere was calm, almost hopeful. As night fell, the woman spoke quietly. "John, I have been thinking about what comes after I find my family. I do not want to leave this place. This cabin, this ranch, it feels safe. It feels like home. But now, I cannot imagine this place without you." They traveled carefully, following the paths she remembered and looking for signs of life. The woman led the way, her instincts sharp and practiced. John followed closely, alert for danger but also ready to support her in any way needed. As they moved through the forests and fields, they encountered reminders of the world's unpredictability: rivers swollen with melted snow, fallen trees blocking paths, and distant signs of other travelers. Yet with each obstacle, they worked together seamlessly. John's strength and knowledge complemented her agility and tracking skills. They moved quietly, cautiously, and with determination. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, they spotted smoke rising in the distance. The woman's heart leapt. "It could be them," she whispered. "My family." They were alive and they were safe. She ran forward, calling out to them. Her family turned, surprised, then overjoyed. There were tears, embraces, and laughter. The woman's journey, once filled with fear and uncertainty, had reached a moment of pure relief and happiness. John watched quietly, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and pride. He had helped her survive, and now she was reunited with her loved ones. Her family welcomed John as well, grateful for his role in keeping her safe. They shared stories of her journey, the hardships she had endured, and the courage she had shown. John remained humble, content to know that he had made a difference. After the reunion, the woman spoke with her family privately. She told them of the time she had spent at the ranch, of John's kindness, and of the bond that had grown between them. Her family listened carefully, understanding the depth of her words and the importance of the connection she had formed. When they returned to the cabin together, the woman turned to John. "I have found my family, but I want to stay here," she said softly. "With you. This is where I feel safe, and where I want to build a life." The woman became a permanent part of the ranch, helping John with the animals, repairs, and planning for the seasons ahead. Her family visited occasionally, happy to see her safe and thriving, but they understood that her place was now at the cabin with John. The bond between John and the woman continued to grow. They shared meals, laughter, and quiet evenings by the fire. They worked together to improve the ranch, planting a small garden, repairing fences, and tending to the animals. Each day brought new challenges, but they faced them together, strengthened by trust, respect, and care for each other. One evening, as the sun set and the fire burned brightly in the cabin, John spoke quietly. "Do you remember the first night you came here?" "I do. I was cold, scared, and alone. I did not know if anyone would help me." The loneliness that had haunted him since his wife's passing was gone, replaced by companionship, trust, and a quiet happiness. As the days turned into weeks, the ranch thrived. The animals were healthy, the land was cared for, and the cabin felt alive with laughter, work, and life. John and the woman continued to grow closer, their bond deepened by shared experiences, challenges, and triumphs. They were no longer simply two individuals surviving in the world. They were partners, companions, and friends who had found something rare and precious in each other. Spring fully arrived, bringing warmth, sunlight, and new life. Flowers began to bloom around the cabin, the garden grew green, and the animals played freely in the open fields. The ranch was no longer a place of isolation. It was a home filled with life, hope, and the promise of the future. One morning, as they worked together planting vegetables in the garden, the woman paused and looked at John. "We have been through so much," she said, "but I would not change a single moment. You helped me survive, and together we have built something strong, something lasting." The world beyond was unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, but here, in this place, they had found safety, companionship, and the beginnings of a future built together. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they returned to the cabin. Inside, the fire burned brightly, the smell of cooked food filled the air, and the warmth of their home surrounded them. They sat together in comfortable silence, content in the knowledge that they had faced the hardships of the past and emerged stronger, closer, and more connected than ever. That night, as they prepared for sleep, the woman looked at John. "I know the world can be uncertain," she said softly, "but I am not afraid anymore. Because I have you, and together we can face anything." Inside, two lives intertwined, no longer alone, no longer fearful, but filled with warmth, trust, and the promise of the future. The woman, once a traveler seeking shelter, had found not only safety but also a home and a companion. John, once a lonely widower, had discovered the joy of connection, the strength of trust, and the comfort of shared life. Together, they looked forward to the days ahead, knowing that whatever challenges came, they would face them together, stronger, braver, and united by the bond they had built in the quiet, snowy days and the trials that had tested them both. And so, life on the ranch continued, full of hope, companionship, and the quiet happiness that comes from knowing that even in a world of uncertainty, trust, courage, and love can create a home where hearts find safety and belonging.